Hey, there's gonna be a bunch of trigger warnings for this video. I'll throw this up, but not everything will be here, since I don't feel like manually going and checking what's right and wrong. Alright, let's do this stuff. Recently, I've been introduced to a TTRPG system known as Stars of the City, based on the games created by Project Moon, such as Limbus Company and Library of Ruina. Now, unlike most systems, Stars of the City, instead of using classes, uses archetypes. These archetypes, while not dictating playstyles, give general pushes to what you should do, as character creation is very free-form in Stars of the City. So, because I'm a silly guy, and have played one full session and 1/4 of a one-shot in the system, I'm qualified to explain every archetype and rank them in its tier list. I'll be ranking the archetypes in a few categories, being their story abilities, their battle ability, their tragic flaw, and my personal rating. I'll also be explaining keywords as they show up, so pay attention. Alright, let's get into it. We first start off with a very simple archetype, the hopeful. Hopefuls are usually new to the whole business they're a part of, and are very naive to the cruelty of the world. Their first story ability is bombastic, and we've got some keywords already. Attempts are simply checks in D&D, and the system uses a D10 system. There's 3 levels of attempts, and for every difficulty, there's less dice. An easy attempt has 3 dice, a moderate has 2, and a hard has 1. Bombastic says that whenever you try to rally people, you gain an extra die to do so. Not a great ability, but it's alright, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10, mostly due to the downside of it. Idolize is also simple, being that if someone succeeds an attempt, you can make them your idol for the rest of the session. No matter what your stats are, you can help your idol with any attempts, giving them an extra die. Normally, you can only help if you have a higher stat or one below, so this is a pretty good effect, as it's self-contained, meaning it doesn't rely on multiple effects to give it extra use, like some archetypes. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. The battle ability is latent potential, once per scene, which is basically around in D&D, when an ally gains a buff or a boon, which are positive effects, boons being more specific, while buffs are more general. You can choose to gain one of that effect. While simple, it's pretty good, as if an ally can gain strength, which increases attack, you can grab that for yourself. Overall, give it a 7 out of 10, because there's better. Very good, though. The ability to link strong boons that can help later on is very nice, but it does rely on your teammates to have those boons and buffs. The tragic flaw is innocence. Whenever someone dies, you gain 2 anxiety. Anxiety goes in tandem with injury, so let's go over those. Of the 6 stats, 3 are physical, and 3 are mental. Physical stats are affected by injury, adding a +1 to your lowest roll with however many injuries you have, since rolling low is better in this system. The same goes for anxiety. But for the mental stats, now, this flaw can be good or bad, depending on how much your party is murder hobos, so I'll give innocence a 5 out of 10. Overall, I give hopeful a 6 out of 10, placing them in B tier, but pretty close to A tier. A very good starting archetype. The next archetype is the expert. The first story ability is professional know-how. It depends on the setting, but to be fair, a lot of abilities do. However, this one still isn't great. You can notice suspicious clauses in contracts, gain an extra die while scrutinizing people, and can do paperwork in half the time. This is a 2 out of 10 ability at its finest. Unless you're signing a lot of contracts or doing a lot of paperwork, this is kind of useless. The next ability is reliable. If you fail an attempt, you can increase the harm to yourself to minimize the harm done to others. This isn't too bad, but not great, so it'll get a 6 out of 10. The story ability is expertise, increasing your maximum light by 1, which is basically your energy for your skills. You can also re-roll dice when they roll minimum damage, but you have to take the new roll. Overall, give it a 6 out of 10. Pretty good. Nothing I can complain about for the ability. However, the flaw is really bad for roleplay. Waldorf basically says that if you want to be vulnerable for anything, you roll an attempt with 1 die less, and if you fail, the person thinks you have an ulterior motive for explaining this. This, I find, is one of the worst flaws, as being vulnerable is normal in TTRPGs, explaining maybe your tragic backstory, or anything of that sort. This just says, nah, you're suspicious for doing that, because you look like you have everything together. That's terrible. 1 out of 10. If the flaw was alright, I would have given this maybe high C or low B, but this is getting a 3 out of 10 overall, giving it the bottom of C tier. Now Sadist is a fun archetype. The first story ability is Harvest, and this is a broken ability. If you have a corpse and time, you can do many different things. Find an item, cut off a limb for money, regain some HP, get info on how the body died, or remove an anxiety. The insane amount of versatility this gives, and how all abilities are useful, gives Harvest an immediate 10 out of 10. The second story ability is Sneak Attack, and oh my, this shit is so good. For one attempt, if you succeed, you can kill a non-unique enemy immediately. Yeah, the scene gets messy, as it wasn't a clean kill, but still, that's insane. That's an 8 out of 10 bare minimum, maybe even a 9 or a 10, depending on the campaign. The combat ability is Critical Infliction, and it's not as cracked as everything else so far, but still pretty good. On a critical hit, which is when you roll max damage on an offensive die, it increases the ailments, bind, and fragile inflicted by hit effects increase by 1. Oh boy, that's a lot to cover. Ailments are basically status effects, split into 2 categories, health damage and stagger damage. Stagger is a second health bar, sort of, that decreases when you take damage by the same amount or by losing a clash against a defensive die, but when it goes down to 0, you get staggered, which is basically stun in D&D. Bind decreases your speed die, which acts as your initiative, but it's rolled at the start of every scene, and Fragile increases the amount of damage you take. We'll get into tags later, but just know that a hit tag basically says that when the target is hit by something with a hit tag, it will trigger. Overall, this is like a 7 out of 10. There's easy ways to make this really good, but overall, it's good. Makes multi-hit attacks with low damage good. Lastly, the flaw. Poor judgment. You have -1 dice when trying to figure out the alignment of someone, and if you fail, you get an inaccurate assumption and fully believe it. Can be destructive. Can be alright. Give it a 6 out of 10. Overall, I'm giving Sadist a 9 out of 10, putting them in S tier. They're a great archetype, with all their abilities being great, by themselves or as a whole. Next up, Upgraded. First story ability is Perfected, making it so you don't need to eat, sleep, drink, or breathe. You're also immune to toxins and poisons. Overall, quite good, 8 out of 10. Second is Replacement Parts. This lets you replace your parts, and even find better parts from special enemies, which could give you a variety of effects. Overall, this is a nice effect. I'll give it a 7 out of 10, and it could have been an 8 or even a 9 if you weren't limited to one special part. The battle ability is Durable, and this is another explaining time. At the start of every scene, you get a 1d4 plus 1 block die to use whenever you want. So, let's get into explaining. This die counts as a saved die, meaning it can be used whenever. For example, if you don't have a way to block an attack, since you've already attacked this turn and only have one action, you can use this to reduce the damage you take, or nullify it if you win the clash. This gets stronger at levels 3, 9, and 16, increasing by a d2, so at level 3, it becomes 1d6 plus 1, 9 is 1d8 plus 1, so on. It also gets a tier 1 module at level 6 and 13, which we will get to in the next archetype. Overall, a 6 out of 10, as there is a better version of this, but it's still pretty decent. The flaw of Upgraded is Desires, which is that you have a desire you can't do, when other people do it. The GM chooses a stat to have -1 die in it for the rest of the session. 6 out of 10, not terrible, not great. Overall, Upgraded is great. I'll give it a 7 out of 10, and put it in the bottom of 8 tier. Not too many complaints for me. While I could see Replacement Parts being higher than it currently is, I feel like the rest of the archetype is balanced enough to keep it down here. Say hello to the Engineer. This is the most complicated archetype, for both a good and bad reason. To start off, We have workshop license. This allows you to tinker with mechanical items to create new ones, along with gaining an extra die when doing things relating to technology. Overall, a very nifty ability. I'll give it a 9 out of 10 for creativity. Next is Flash of Genius, which gives all mental stats an ability to gain a die. You get one for each of them, and you get them back at the start of the session. 7 out of 10. Very nice to have. Saved me a couple of times. The battle ability. Thought bro boy. Tinker is its name, and it is complicated. See, every skill has modules, little things to change how they work. These modules can't be changed once selected, so you have to choose wisely. These make or break a build. Tinker says fuck that, change whenever you want. For 2 emotion points, which are things you use to use your ego. Your big attack, which you get by winning clashes. You can change a module on a skill. This is a really complicated skill, and you have to know what you want when you want. You also get some extra spare modules, which are modules that you can place on any skill, as all skills start with 3 tier 1 modules and a tier 2. Overall, due to the complexity of it, I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. It absolutely can be great if you know how to use it well, but it's a major hurdle for new players. And now, the flaw. Oh boy, where do I begin with Stifled? Whenever you finish a project, you have to see if you did copyright. That's right, there's copyright in the city. If you ignore the warnings to pay 3 times, you'll have a super boss sent to kill you, and you will not survive. I don't like this, because I call it a linked archetype. While the idea of accidentally plagiarizing something is funny, this flaw pretty much requires workshop license to work. Because of this, I'll give it a 3 out of 10. Overall, the engineer is a complicated archetype, and I would not recommend it to new players, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10, so it sits in the bottom of B tier. This definitely isn't a beginner-friendly archetype, and that's fine, but that doesn't mean I won't dock some points from it. Next up, the most boring archetype, Drone. Drone's first story ability is unassuming. Unassuming sucks. You automatically succeed roles that make you seem unimportant, weak, or cowardly. This sucks. Need I say more? More than likely, this'll never be used, as I don't really think it's useful. 3 out of 10. Next is Contact. You have a guy that can give you info for a price. That's it. It's alright. 5 out of 10. The battle ability is Formal Education, which gives a stat up in a mental state, and increases your limited skills by 2 additional uses. You have alright, I guess. Limited skills have, well, limited uses. However, there's an extension to that in Exhaust, which triggers when a limited skill runs out of use. But even then, it's still hard to do a build like this. There currently aren't any tier 1 modules that give you a limit, only tier 2, which means you'd want to go Intelligence just so you can get more rank 2 modules. I could see it being useful as a second battle ability, in combination with a different battle ability. I'll probably do something like that, but by itself, I'll give it a 2 out of 10. Lastly is the flaw, Inferiority. -1 die when talking to someone of authority, and if you fail, you follow their orders. 4 out of 10, not that interesting of a flaw. Overall, honestly, this is probably the worst archetype. It doesn't really pair well with itself. None of the abilities are interesting. This is 1 out of 10 and an F tier. Maybe a bit harsh, yes, but like, I need a F tier. Vagrant's our next archetype, and it starts with a banger and gut feeling. You get an ability equal to your instinct where you can sense the danger in an area from a scale of 1 to 5. A very solid ability, no other words for it. 8 out of 10. GTFO is a little weaker, being that you can run away faster, helping allies run away if you roll more than 1 success. Give it a 6 out of 10. Don't Fall Behind is a decent battle ability, increasing your speed die by 1, along with a boost in power as long as you're faster than the opponent, giving it a 7 out of 10. The flaw though, oh boy, it's dead. That's it. 10 out of 10. Needn't say anymore. Overall, I give Vagrant a 7 out of 10, giving it an A tier right behind Upgraded. Next up, Modified. Immediately, a good start is Adapted, having different options on what you can do. Get an extra die for climbing, get an extra die for swimming and be able to hold your breath in water for an hour, an extra die for environmental hazards, or just regenerate lost limbs. Now, with such potential, you think there'd be a limit to it, right? Nope, you get 2 once you take it the first time, and if you take it again when you get more story abilities, you get all 4. This is a 9 out of 10, I love this. Hardy is also pretty good, with it negating some injury gain after resting. I'll give it a 7 out of 10, very solid. The battle ability of mutation is pretty good, increasing a physical stat by 1, along with giving all dice on a random skill an extra power for the whole combat. 8 out of 10, very solid. Even the flaw is solid, being no use hiding it. You have a part of your body that acts as an emotional tell, so you suffer -1 die at deception, and if you fail, the person you were trying to deceive learns your tell. A very nice flaw, can slot in well with a lot of builds. 8 out of 10. Overall, Modified is a great choice for any style of play, so it's an 8 out of 10, landing solidly in the top of 8 tier. Loyal is up next, and it's a linked archetype, so that's a few points docked. However, Noble Sacrifice still is pretty good. Basically, Loyal has a loyalty, and with Noble Sacrifice, you can help them, regardless of stats. Along with that, if you're helping an ally, and they fail, you can take the harm that would have normally been done to them. Normally good, but since it's linked, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Push on is solid, letting you ignore your injuries for 1 roll. Same for anxieties, and they both have separate uses. You can also use it after your roll, so that's good. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Interceptor introduces interception, which basically is that when you hold a speed die, meaning you don't use it, you can use it when an ally is attacked to redirect the attack to you. Going back to Interceptor, whenever you hold a speed die, you gain a protection, which is just extra defense. Pretty good, but there's another part, being that when you intercept with a held speed die, your defensive dice gain an additional power. Solid, giving it a 7 out of 10. However, the floor ruins a somewhat decent character. Overprotective uses the loyalty from Noble Sacrifice, thus needing the link. When your loyalty gets an injury, you get an anxiety. It can only happen 3 times a session, though. I find it really boring. For 1, it's a linked skill. For 2, it's only injury that triggers this. I'd prefer it to be that if the loyalty gets an anxiety, the loyal gets an injury as well. For 3, it can only trigger thrice. I really just don't enjoy this. Of course, I want to clear this up. I get why these types of skills are here, but even so, I just don't really enjoy them. Can't explain much more than that, but I've never really enjoyed something like that. Overall, I'm giving Loyal a 4 out of 10, landing it in C tier. Next up, Commander. Commander, flavor-wise, is great. Gameplay-wise, first ability is Assumed Authority. When you want to control others, you gain a die. If you are dressed like a superior to the people you want to control, you automatically succeed. This is a fine ability, but I feel like it's a little too narrow. 4 out of 10. Can absolutely be good, but it's a bit too specific. Next up is Composure, which is the opposite of Hardy, negating some anxiety gain after resting. 7 out of 10, same as Hardy, since it's the same effect. The battle ability is Follow My Lead, which is the reverse of Latent Potential. When you gain a buff or boon, you can give it to an ally as well. I'll give it an 8 out of 10, because it's self-sufficient, instead of having to rely on an ally to gain a buff or boon. I'll be honest, this is my second favorite flaw, but it doesn't help how it is really bad for co-op play. Had to be me stops you from helping allies. That's it. I really like it, but it's not good. I'll give it a 2 out of 10, and it hurts to see. I really like Commander, and I want to give it a 5 out of 10, but I can't. It's a 4.5 out of 10, so close to the B tier, but it's the top of C tier. And now, hoo boy, this is probably the best archetype. Egoist is so strong, and it's all because of the battle ability. But we'll get to that third, because first, let's talk about Manifestation. Manifestation basically says that your ego can manifest in a small burst. It allows you to, if an ego you have makes sense, use it to either gain a die, or make the attempt a persona check. For example, if you have an ego that could create smoke, you could use it to create a smoke screen. This is so fun, and a really interesting ability. 9 out of 10. Next up is Understanding, which says that when you kill a light-infused enemy, such as another person with an ego, you can gain their knowledge, giving +1 die to all mental stats for the session. While this is less common at lower levels, at higher levels, you'll more than likely fight more light-infused enemies, meaning this be even stronger. 7 out of 10. Finally, the battle ability, Efflorescent Ego. Normally, you only get your ego at level 2, but with Efflorescent, you get it at level 1, along with an extra tier 2 module. Along with that, at the start of every scene you gain 2 emotion points, which with everything else, is just fully insane. 12 out of 10, fantastic, and the flaw is just a nice wrap-up, a promise to yourself gives you a creed, and if you break it in any way, you suffer an anxiety. 8 out of 10. 10 out of 10 Archetype. I have seen people think Egoist falls off, and I agree. Mid-game, it kind of slips a little, but early game, it's great, and late game, when you have a bunch of egos, it's great. Ego spam is a build, and I've used it, it's the top of S tier. Going from peak to mid, we've got Vengeful, a linked archetype, starting with Pursuit. Pursuit gives you a nemesis, and you gain an extra die and ignore your injuries and anxieties when trying to harm them. The same applies for minions and allies of your nemesis, but without the ignoring of injuries and anxieties. You also can choose something as your minor nemesis once a session, giving the same bonus as a minion or ally of your nemesis, being an extra die. Overall, for what it is, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Very strong. Next is Scram, which gives automatic success in scaring away non-combatants, and an extra die in scaring combatants. It's about great. 3 out of 10. The battle ability is Retort, which gives a counter die. They work like an evade die, where if they win a clash, they don't go away, but it has to be an offensive damage type. You get it on even-numbered scenes, and at level 6 and 13, the size increases by D2, while at level 3 and 16, you get to put a rank 1 module on it. I'll give it a 5 out of 10, could be higher if it was every turn, but it'd be crazy if it was. Once again, the link is in the flaw, Blind Obsession, which loses you a die whenever you try to not harm your nemesis while they're in your presence. Along with that, if your nemesis escapes, you gain an anxiety. It's like 3 out of 10. Not really interesting. Look, I don't like this one. Pursuit is good if you have a recurring villain type of campaign, and can certainly make or break some scenarios, but I don't really think it's enough. 2 out of 10. Bottom of D tier. We have my third favorite archetype besides Egoist and an archetype I'll review later on. Weary. Weary's first story ability is Second Wind, being able to ignore up to 5 injuries or anxieties for a roll, then gaining another of it. So if you ignore injury, you'll gain an injury after the roll, regardless of success or failure. Do you see why this is broken? There's not a limit to this. This basically says, you don't have to worry about injuries and anxieties unless you have 6 or more. This is broken. 10 out of 10. Love this thing. The second ability is Make the Most of It, which gets rid of an injury and anxiety after a rest, while ignoring them while taking rest actions. This is pretty good, so I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Now, before I go on to the battle ability, why do I like Weary? It's because, while all of the abilities are great together, if you separate them, their effects will still be pretty good. You could take Second Wind and not make the most of it, and vice versa. They tie into each other, but can still be pulled apart. The only thing that doesn't tie into the Weary's theme of injuries and anxieties is their battle ability. Extreme Fatigue, increasing health by 20 and stagger resistance by 5, along with more HP at level 9 and 15 is pretty good. But all defensive dice also gain an additional power at 50% health or below is pretty cool. It kind of incentivizes playing more risky, and I do like playing risky. 8 out of 10. The flaw though, ties the story abilities up in a nice bow. Overworked gives an injury and anxiety at the start of a mission. That's it. Simple, clean, ties in well with what Weary is already doing. 9 out of 10. Overall, I'm giving Weary a 9 out of 10. At the bottom of S tier. Very, very strong. Oh hey, my second favorite archetype, Detective. It sucks, and is a pseudo-linked archetype, Why do I like it? I dunno, probably because my character for the campaign I'm in is a detective. Overtime investigations gives an extra die when taking the investigate rest action, and you gain a free use of it. It's alright, like a 4 out of 10. It's a good narrative tool if you can roll high enough, but there are better rest actions you could do. The free use is nice, though. The second story ability is Keen Eye, giving a reroll to the highest die when you're examining a person or area. You can also help regardless of stats when doing that. Like, 3 out of 10. It's not bad, but doesn't really serve a purpose. It also interacts with the flaw in a kind of punishing way if you fail the check, but we'll get to that. The battle ability is Exploit Weakness, which when hitting a weakness, doubles the extra damage from the weakness hit. This is the worst battle ability debatably. The only one that could debatably be worse is Drone's Formal Education. That's because most enemies would only take an additional 1 or 2 damage from this ability. You'd pretty much be required to make a character that can use Fragile to make the enemy's affinities worse. 2 out of 10. Lastly, the flaw, Paranoid. Remember Keen Eye? Well, if you fail a roll you've got that extra die on, you gain an anxiety. This punishes the player for wanting to interact with one of their story abilities, and I don't really enjoy that. 2 out of 10. Overall, Detective is a 2 out of 10, but a better 2 out of 10 than Vagrant. So Detective is the top of D tier, Famed is next, and this is a fun one. Let's start with Big Spender. You gain a die when bribing or enticing people with money. You also suffer less injuries and anxieties from financial hardship, gaining 1 less. With the new downtime rules, this could happen, so it's pretty funny. I'll give it an 8 out of 10, as money can go far in the city. Leveraged Fame is also pretty good, getting a once permission Twitter post that can get you pretty much anything, like recognizing a person or finding a certain place. 6 out of 10, as getting a free Twitter post is funny as hell. The battle ability is Glitz and Glamour, which is pretty good. It's like Durable, but for Evade. However, instead of being a 1d4 plus 1, it's a 1d6, and loses the d2 increase at level 3. I'll give it a 7 out of 10, as it's just simply stronger than Durable in my opinion. While yes, Block can decrease the damage you can take, if you're lucky, you just take no damage at all. The flaw is Familiar Face, which means you lose a die when lying about your identity or hiding in a crowd. You can also get recognized in public once a session, to the GM's discretion. A 7 out of 10, very cool, fits well with the character. Overall, a very nice archetype, a solid 7 out of 10, placing it in A tier. Researcher is a pretty cool archetype. Its first story ability is Cram Session, letting you spend an hour to research something, and gain +1 die on mental stats relating to what you searched for. If you have some downtime at a rest stop, this is great. An hour is a lot of time though, and may disrupt your other rest actions. 6 out of 10. If you want something quicker, though, you've got Quick Assessment. You get an amount equal to your intellect, and when used, it tells you the main gimmick of the fight. Very nice and simple. 7 out of 10. The battle ability is Promising Results, gaining an extra stack of a boon when you apply it to yourself. I originally gave this a 7 out of 10, but I skipped over the last part, so I thought it was only 1 boon per scene. It's not. Yeah, pretty good. 8 out of 10, close to 9. However, what I didn't mention about Researcher is that it's a pseudo-linked archetype. Thanks to the flaw, Curiosity Killed the Cat. You've got -1 die to convince others to share secrets, along with when using Cram Session, roll a d8, and on a 1, people know you've been snooping. It's fine. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Overall, a 6 out of 10, the top of B tier. Very solid. Wanderer recently got a buff, not directly, but thanks to the new downtime rules. This is because of their ability, Safe Travels. You get a +1 for maintaining vehicles, covering tracks, finding shelter, and navigating confusing paths. I used to call this a 4 out of 10, but now with downtime, I'll bump it up to a 5 out of 10. I know a guy is basically Drone's contact. 5 out of 10. The battle ability is Unrelenting, granting 2 Safeguard, which blocks ailments and debuffs. This increases by 1 at level 9 and 13. There's also the fact that it gives an Endure, surviving a fatal blow at 1 horsepower, but only once. Overall, 4 out of 10. The Endure can be helpful in a pinch, but the safeguard is negligible, since there are better ways to gain safeguard. The flaw is responsibility. Abandoned. You've got 3 grudges, and when they show up, you lose a die trying to resolve it, while gaining an anxiety when it pops up the first time. It's a 6 out of 10, a bit basic, but done well. Overall, I'll give Wanderer a 4 out of 10, but I could see 5 out of 10. Wanderer and Commander are interchangeable, which one should top C tier, but I think Commander is just a bit better. Mastermind is unintentionally one of the funniest archetypes out there, but it's still really good. Home Turf used to be a little worse, but just like Wanderer, has been buffed with the introduction of downtime. Home Turf gives an extra die within or regarding your home turf, which at level 1 is a street, level 4 is a block, a large area at 8, a half mile at 12, and a city at 15. The residents of your home turf will also be more helpful to you. Overall, this is a 9 out of 10. This is really cool. The second story ability is You Fool, which lets you have a flashback to a plan you made before, and honestly, just the mental image of someone yelling, "You fool!" when you use this ability makes this also a 9 out of 10. The battle ability keeps this going with Seize a Chance, so that whenever an enemy is staggered, you can use a skill against them but still pay the light cost. You also get 2 emotion points when an enemy is killed. 9 out of 10. Once again, can Mastermind get the 4-piece? Yep, overconfidence is the flaw, and once permission, when you have the upper hand in battle, you can get a few different outcomes, being either getting caught in a long speech, not noticing a new threat, or ignoring the weakest enemy. 9 out of 10. Which means Mastermind of course gets a 9 out of 10. Square Inches S tier. The final archetype has a version 0.3 is here, Forgotten. However, I do have to talk about their lore for a second to understand their abilities. Basically, you were big in some place somewhere, be it a business or somewhere else, but you were eventually betrayed by someone. Going back to abilities, the first story ability is Forgotten Memories, which gives you a major secret. You get an extra die when using that secret for blackmail, but also when you want to remember something about your old faction. Overall, 7 out of 10, pretty nice. Clean is next, and it's pretty mid. Once permission, by pain and anxiety, an item on you can't be harmed or taken from you. 3 out of 10, pretty mid. The battle ability is unique, though. Lost and Found gives 2 limited skills an extra tier 2 module, along with giving the recharge rest action a boost, restoring all charges to 2 skills instead of 1. There's also the unique boon Lost and Found gives when hitting half health and a quarter health. Alarm, it applies the exhaust effect of a skill with an exhaust effect, and then goes away. Overall, really unique. 8 out of 10, you can do some silly things with it. The flaw is nostalgia, which means you lose a die whenever you see people indulging in benefits you used to have until you leave or remove the person from the area. If you stay long enough, you get an anxiety. 6 out of 10, pretty interesting, as that's also the final score I'm going to give Forgotten. And we're done. That's my tier list. If you have any complaints, throw them in the comments. I know this is different from my usual content, but don't worry, I've got a challenge run finished, and it won't take too long to edit. Well, I've got nothing more to say, except that I hate my upload schedule, and I'll talk about it more in the next video. My name is Yalda or Zykram, haven't decided yet, and I'll see you all soon, very soon.